Hey everybody, it's Linda G and your favorite astrologer at Astrology Alert, Andre.
Hello, everyone. Happy holiday season.
I like your microphone. Can you start singing Strangers in the Night?
Yeah, no. I'm not going to sing, but yeah, my microphone is mostly pretty good. Yeah.
Sorry, I had to do that. Okay, listen, we did get a lot of questions and I know it's hard for you to pull up, a lot of things that we hadn't talked about before, but I just started to show him and I were talking about Rachel Maddow and you guys were asking about it and he has done a chart on Rachel Maddow. So let's hear what he has to say.
Yeah. So Rachel Maddow in 2022 has a Pluto transit. And you have to keep in mind when you talk about a planet like Pluto, it's a very slow moving planet. So often for many years, it'll be in the background doing nothing, right? It's somewhere in the chart, but it's not connecting to anything because the way astrology works, planets have to contact something when you were born, some position like that. And in her case, it's been relatively dormant, but now it's contacting her horizon line in 2022. And that horizon line, the side of it that is contacting in her chart is her relationship house, the place of marriage, the place of relation. So one interpretation is that it'll affect her partner, could affect, for example, a while back, people mentioned they thought she had COVID, but it was her partner that had COVID. She had to take time off. And so that was the theme. This is even more intensely so because it's right on the angle. So it could be something to do with that, or you could say or, because it could be both. It changes relationships in a broad sense as well. So that could be potentially a change of job, which would mean relating to new people, right? As a result of that. So bottom line, she's in a cycle of really big change in 2022.
Wow.
And as to the where people have said, is she in danger? I mean, because Rachel Maddow is pretty direct. I mean, sometimes I look at her face and I think, wow, did you just say that? I'm amazed.
That's why people love her so much.
Exactly. But of course, that's the concern that there might be some crazy person, who decides to do something. I don't speak with her. I don't know her personally at all. If I did, I would suggest to her, this is a year where you might want to do protection practices, do things to, people do things like surround themselves with light, all of that too. And in part, it's mysterious how it helps you. And in part, it raises your awareness. So you're more attuned to what might happen, all that kind of thing. Because yeah, there is some risk for sure. I mean, it would not be, let's just put it this way. That's usually not the easiest, most trouble-free year. I would say it's a little bit on the turbulent side for Rachel.
What sign is she?
She's Aries.
Oh,
Aries, I believe. Hold on, let me double check that. She's Aries. She's Aries with Cancer rising. So the other thing going on is that aside from that, right? And this is where you start to see, some possibility that she might be either changing stations, going to a bigger job of some kind or something like that. The energy in this chart is moving toward big prominence in her career because separately, aside from that Pluto, she's got Jupiter, she's got the moon in Pisces and her planets in Aries. Jupiter is going to cruise through all that from the beginning of 22 right through almost the end of 20, are big career years, right? And when you see the energy of change in the middle, you kind of think, I wonder if, I'm pretty sure she's not going to go work for Fox, but maybe CNN, I don't know, something could happen there where she might get a big offer, or maybe she'll get even more power at MSNBC. Although right now she's like the top,
the top. Yeah, she's beating
anchor,
out Hannity. She's beating Hannity's numbers, but she just recently signed a new contract with MSNBC.
Right. So then that's where you would suspect maybe a new role of some kind. I don't know. I don't know what that would be, but whatever it is, that even if it's just to say her profile is moving upward, right?
Okay.
Put her alone. So that's yeah.
All right. And the other question, will the effect of Neptune leaving Pisces in the country in 2025 going into Aries?
Okay, so Neptune leaving Pisces at this stage of the ball game is good, because think back, Neptune has a 165-year orbit, entered Pisces around 2011. And if you think back, I follow politics really closely, and it's really when the insanity started to build. I remember that's when I first saw that horrible Ted Cruz, who's just a lying sack of manure. All he ever thought, he just invents things.
But wait, tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, exactly. I'll tell you how I really feel. He's my sign. He's a disgrace to my sign. It's unbelievable. So, and it wasn't just that. There was the Tea Party kind of around the same time. Neptune, what it does is when it's in a sign, and in this case, it's its own sign, because Neptune is the co-ruler at minimum. Some people say it's the full ruler. I prefer to call it the co-ruler of Pisces. So it really expands the Pisces energy, which on the one hand, the good side of it is the explosion we've had in media, in YouTube, for example, in videos and information being passed along that way. That's good. All of that is fabulous. There are teachings today that you could never get before as a result of Neptune being in that sign. The problem is that's the information side, which is great. There's also the disinformation side. And Neptune is the idea that something is not as it seems, anything that is fake, anything that is in some way deceitful, someone is being deceived, that's Neptune. And then you get self-deception, which is what the country has been caught in. And you could even say it's not just the US, it's kind of all around the world. I mean, if you look around the world, it's been pretty crazy, whether it's Brazil or, not long ago, I was reading that they were burning masks in Austria. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Like Germans and Austrians, this is really getting out of hand, because you think, okay, these people normally are really logical, but the world is in that phase. So Neptune getting out of it should help a lot to, have that self-deception recede, right? So
Okay.
like for example, all this anti-vaxxer, now by then it shouldn't matter because
Yeah.
COVID should be gone, but it's not just that, it's just the overall logic that a lot of people are, they're waiting for JFK to show up in Dallas. Stuff where you think you're living in Alice in Wonderland. I can appreciate the world of imagination, but I think you're taking it a little too far, right?
Exactly.
So that'll help. Now, the only drawback, I have to bring this in too, the one drawback, and this is where hopefully, and maybe I can check with you what you're seeing, is that in the cyclical arrangement in the US chart, that corresponds almost precisely to when the Civil War broke out, right? Because what was happening was around now were the years just prior to when the hostility started. I don't see that as likely this time around because the planets involved are a little more separated. So back then they were more concentrated, and that's always when it gets more dangerous, when they're too close. So back then, when Neptune entered Aries, that's when the Civil War started, basically, and they spent.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right. But to me, this time around, my suspicion would be that there might be a conflict then, but not on the level of, actually, open shooting or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the dynamics. What is your sense of that when you assess
Like
it?
a war, like a civil war?
Yeah.
I see terrorist cells, but I don't see anybody. I see the United States making sure that people are cut off at the pass. You can't do a civil war anymore. You can't, because the Trumpsters don't have the utilities and stuff to do it. They don't have the tanks and the planes and the Navy and the Army.
Right. That's exactly it. Yeah. Yeah. So see, you can almost anticipate though. See, this is the strange thing that you can almost anticipate that that's telling you. Here's an example. Neptune enters Aries almost precisely after the next election in 2024. Okay. So if they lose that election, they're going to be even more upset than when they lost this election. So then, right, yeah, you could get a problem because especially if history repeats, and back in the Civil War era, what caused the Jim Crow type thing to develop is that there were really close elections, and then they start arguing, then they have to make compromises, and it ended up compromising, the agreement that what Lincoln wanted, got delayed by 100 years. That's what is not a good thing. We'd want to have solid victories, right? And I think it's possible, but there I'm not sure, 100% without to say, oh, we're going to win big. What do you see for 2024?
I see us winning. I'm sorry. I know everybody. I know McCarthy is all, yeah, when we take over, but this Roe versus Wade is really going to make women come out.
So wait, but now you're talking about 22, right?
I know. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so 22, you're saying that in the midterms, yeah. Okay, there I agree with you that my first sense of intuition when I read that the Supreme Court is going to lower the 15 weeks and all that stuff, immediately I thought, okay, this is like they're walking into the trap, because doing that in the summer of an election year, it's got to be the most
stupid.
Yeah, it's just not a good idea, because what you're doing is mobilizing women's power, which, by the way, separately too, in the astrology, I've mentioned this quite a few times. The discovery of the planet that demoted Pluto, Eris, that's the warrioress, that's female power. And it's been building since 2005 in one form or another. It really came into the foreground with the Me Too movement and Gretchen Carlson and all that, right? But what Trump has done historically, when people look back, is he's empowered women. He comes in doing this, like he's an open misogynist, and he gets the opposite result. And very often, these historical figures they tend to be stupid people that don't realize the world is using them. They think that they're, the second coming of something. They're not. They're just, it's something like the old order has to manifest a little extra strong for the other side to rebel and push back. So anyway, long story short, very bad idea. In fact, I would have said to the Supreme Court, if you're going to rule that way, rule now, because maybe by then people will forget about it some. But if you wait till the summer, that is really asking for trouble.
Oh yeah, they're in for it.
Yeah.
And then that Comey saying, "Oh, you can have the baby and take it to the firehouse."
Yeah, I know. That is just.
Did you look up her chart, by the way? Did you look up Amy Comey? I think you did look her up.
I did, except it's one of the many that there's no time for.
Yeah.
And her chart is less, from what I have, less assailed than Kavanaugh's. Kavanaugh's is chart in 22. It's got all kinds of pressure, and I'm not sure why. I'm hoping that it's because something
we call him to task. Yeah.
Yeah, because one of the things about Kavanaugh is, there's this typical Republican behavior. They basically lie through their teeth. They
lied when when the Congress asked them, "Are you going to change?" No, it's precedent.
No, that's right. But then he'll tell you, well, I didn't really change it. I know. They always have a line around it, right? But this is where, if women don't call them out, then, I'm hoping, I'm amazed that any woman votes for a Republican ever. It's just crazy. When you think of what they do, it's stunning to me that you would follow, these people who are living in the 12th century,
And then when you see Trump with his groups, it's usually all white men.
Yeah. And how is it that mostly white men decide women's
They decide what we're going to do, us women.
Yeah, the thing about that, though, is with politics, you have to be patient, because if a person makes a change in the span of a lifetime, the cycles will be a year, 2 years, 5 years at most. In politics, they get extended. So the liberation of women in some ways started in the late 80s, when they actually started to vote in their interest. And that's when they started to vote more democratic. They were given the vote in the 1920s, but they spent many years voting like their husband. And then they started to split. And the reason we've had more democratic governments is because of women, but sometimes because, if I look at what happened in Virginia, and I was mentioning this in a prior, prior thing where I said, if there are 825,000 people that didn't vote, many of those have to be women. And so then I think, well, at least why don't the women vote and show up in mass? Because they would change the country. They would just change it completely.
Oh, with this Roe versus Wade, you'll see some change.
Yeah, exactly. In a good direction too. Yeah.
So Marie wants to know what happens on 2/22/22. Could Andre explain what to expect from Pluto's return on the USA natal chart?
2/22/22. Oh, that's because, I see you're tagging it as that being the degree. Okay, well, a couple of things about that. That's where the astrology can really fool you in that looking for the precise moment doesn't give you the precise result. It just has to be in the range. So
Okay.
we're already in the Pluto return. It's close enough that we're already there. You would say 2021, 2022, and even 2023. They're the Pluto return years. We're in that. It's just a period where the country is realigning itself,
Okay.
and choosing a direction because it's the return from the beginning. But like I believe I said last time, Pluto at the birth of the country, it's a challenging planet, which is why you do see this thing where there are some people that want to be fascists and they want to do that, but they're the minority, right? The majority has consistently been democratic. And to those who say it's going to go fascist, I'm a little skeptical because the Pluto, where it is, it makes a trine to Neptune at the birth of the country. And there's no better planet than Neptune elevated to represent a democracy because Neptune is an inclusive planet, right? So
Right.
Pluto, the planet that supports that, suggests that it aligns with democracy and not with fascism and, with the idea of a single person and that, authoritarian kind of rule. So I see the Pluto return as always, because it's Pluto, there are going to be bumps. We're in them. We already see them, right? There's
Exactly.
danger. But the result of it is a realignment, to realign the democracy and bring it in a new direction, which is supported also by, think about Pluto in late Capricorn, then moves into Aquarius. Aquarius is the sign of the people, right? It goes to the people, not to the fascist. The fascist is when it's in Capricorn, which is when it came in, right? Trump comes
Right.
in right with Pluto in the middle of Capricorn, right?
Wow.
Which, by the way, mirrors the opposite sign. It happened in the 1930s. That's when Hitler was ascendant, and in Japan and the whole world, Mussolini, right? Franco, all those dictators came in at Pluto in the opposite sign. And this time around, we see, Putin ascendant, Kim Jong-un, Trump, Bolsonaro. But notice, by the way, that I don't know if you've looked at this, that the guy that is going to be Bolsonaro is going into it against Lula. And I really like Lula's chart. I like it a lot.
Oh, that's wonderful news.
So then you can kind of see the ebbing of the the insanity or the this Kool-Aid that is pushed it toward the fascist
Right,
element.
right.
Yeah.
Somebody asked, in an eclipse, solar or lunar, conjunct a natal planet or ascendant/descendant, considered auspicious or negative?
That's a great question. Eclipses, when they're happening, at the time of the happening, if they land in some place in your chart where there is discordant energy, then you'll tend to feel either really low energy or really chaotic energy, right? On the other hand, if they catch an area of the chart that is really flowing, this is where you got to know your chart, because it depends on the degree, right? The one we just had was 12 degrees and a little bit Sagittarius. The question is, what do you have there? If that area is flowing, it's actually good. You'll feel this extra connection, this extra clarity, extra power. So it depends on the person, the new moon, by and large, which is a solar eclipse, by the way. Solar eclipses are new moons.
Right.
New moons tilt more toward kind of low, flat energy. They're not very inspiring. So the best result, if you have a good part of your chart, is a certain amount of clarity and ease, but it's not particularly inspiring so much. It feels like you're just at ease. When it's a full moon, which is the eclipse would be a lunar eclipse, in other words, right? When you get a full moon, then the energy rises. So if it catches a good part of your chart, lots of inspiration, clarity. But then if it's a part that is not so good in your chart, you get crashes and emotional. This is why you often hear stories of people doing crazy things on full moons, or hospitals. They'll say even that there's more bleeding, and that the full moon. Think of water kind of running amok. Water as literally in your body, the blood, or your emotions are also like water. So that's why the full moon is like that, right? Okay. So that's the answer to that on the eclipses. Yeah. But one thing I'll say about eclipses, don't overplay them. People are constantly saying,
I know, they're always
my
doing
Lord,
that.
it's going to be an eclipse in
Be
November.
be in fear.
I mean, they turned it into this thing. Oh, there's an eclipse and this is a person is going to die. No, you need way more than an eclipse for that to happen. Yeah.
Somebody asked, do you know anything on Joel Osteen? Did you look at his chart at all?
No. Who is
Okay.
he again? Who is he
He's
again?
that big church guy that they found $600,000 behind the toilet. We'll put that
Okay,
on
well,
the burner. When you get time, look
I'll
him
look
up.
him. No, I'll look him up, and if there's something there that I can see, because the big problem with a lot of these people is getting a birth time. But especially if I have a birth time, but even if not, if I see something that gives me some info, I'll do a video on it so that.
Okay.
you can watch it.
Thelma said, how accurate can you be without a time of birth? I can't find out mine, and the Vital Records Department only sent a replacement without time.
Well, see, it's not so much a matter of accuracy. There you get into how you read charts. I read charts not from the perspective, or let me put it this way, less from the perspective of what is going to happen to you and more from the perspective of what is possible, what you can do. So the chart is like a map giving you a direction about the things you can do to get things to happen, to go your way, right? So there, even without a time, I get a pretty good idea of what's happening because I see the big planets, and then I
Right.
see where the strengths are, and then I'll give you some guidance. Do this, and this, and then your life is going to go better. You're in a sense getting around your fate, right? You're getting
There you
around
go.
the idea that things are going to run you over. You can
And also can sometimes that people tell you, well, I got married in this year and I had children in this year. Does that help you look at the chart and kind of get an idea?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Because that's one of the things that I'll do especially when there's no time, I'll calibrate and say, all right, these years, what was going on? These years, what was going on? Then I'm getting the feeling of what the chart was doing, plus connecting with you. I get the psychic sense of where you're at. And that's when my whole game, so to speak, or my perspective is to give you the best possible guidance. I channel that guidance, that says, here, go this way based on the things that have happened. And yeah, like that.
And Sonoma asked, do you see any big changes for the United States over the next decade, 2022 to 2030? Societal, political, medical, technology, monetary, whatever.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say so. Yes, there are going to be big changes, but I'm generally pretty optimistic. I mean, as optimistic as one can be. Remember this. I mean, people do this all the time. They'll say, we're living in the worst times. No, we're not.
No.
Okay, just turn on your TV and watch some history, and your eyes will pop out of your head. You'll say, oh my Lord, I am so happy to be here, because things were always worse. As bad as they are, they're better than they've ever been, but we're sorting through some crazy
stuff. Virus was a big factor.
Yes, sure. Yeah, it was. But then look how the virus, in some ways, helped a lot of people to rearrange their life, because they got, they stepped back and they thought, I really don't like that work that I'm doing. They were working 3-4 jobs. And now maybe they found something that they like as a result.
That pays better.
That pays better. So you always have to, with life, you gotta, it's like life gives you lemonade, or gives you lemons, make lemonade, work with it, right?
Work with it.
And to me, this decade stands a really good chance of being a decade of great realignment toward more equitability, more fairness, right? Aquarius, people talk about the age of Aquarius. That gets a little weird because by the constellations, it wouldn't happen for the next 600 years. But if you just say, why don't we define the age of Aquarius when there is significant energy in Aquarius, which will be Pluto, because Pluto is going to hang out in Aquarius for the next 15 years. That suggests power to the people, because Aquarius is community. It's a very democratic sign, right?
Awesome.
The only danger with Aquarius would be giving the corporations too much power, because corporations are also groups. So that would be the shadow side. But the light side of it is more people with more wealth, with more access, with more everything, right? More consciousness even, which is good.
Right.
Because a lot of this is consciousness too.
So someone asked, Patty asked it, do you actually have a chart on the virus, or did you just look at it based on, is there an actual chart on the virus?
No, there's no chart on the virus. What there is that historically, and by the way, there's a movie you can watch on Amazon Prime called The Astrology of Pandemics, where the person explains that going back, yeah, it's on there, and a number of people have already seen it on my channel, but it's a really interesting movie. In it, he talks about how going back to Justinian times, way back in history, astrologers have known that whenever Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn align either together or they're at odds with each other, there's some combination of Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn, you get pandemics, which is why this astrologer, my namesake, his name was, because he died before the pandemic. He was, I guess he probably decided, I don't want any part of this, Andre Barbeau. So this guy in 2011, he said there's going to be a pandemic in 2020.
Wow.
Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn. Now, I'm not an expert on pandemics, so I didn't see it, but
Right.
the logic of it makes perfect sense to me. And this guy who made the movie said, you will see, he called it the end, but really it was like the major change. He said, when Jupiter enters Pisces, you will see the effective end of the pandemic, which was when the vaccines came online. That was May of this year. In fact, Biden gave the green light precisely when Jupiter entered Pisces. That's where you see the magic of astrology. Now, building on that, Jupiter goes back into Pisces in January, right? So my suspicion is that this Omicron thing it could easily be not more, but rather the end, because there's this thing in pandemics where near the end, you get more transmissibility, but less, the infection is less.
That's what they're saying about it now.
Because I keep seeing that all these people are getting infected, but it's mild, right? So what it's
Very
telling you is
mild.
that the virus is losing force. And if that's true, we should see January, February at the latest, pretty meaningful, like we're getting beyond this, because Jupiter's in Pisces. So that means Saturn, Uranus and Jupiter are finally separated out of Aquarius, right?
Thank you.
So that.
I was just listening to Dr. Fauci and listening to the news, and they were saying they can't announce it officially, but it's looking like it's way milder.
Yeah, exactly. Which, if it's true, it's not just that it's a good thing, because then you say, well, if I catch it, it's not going to kill me and all that. But it's actually telling you from the perspective of science that they know the way pandemics behave. It means it's losing force, right? It's
Right.
no longer, you're not getting.
But it's really easily
yeah.
Because a man was on shutdown in his room and a woman was across the hall. He didn't even know her. He never met her, but he was secluded and she got it.
Oh yeah, no, but I mean, the thing about that though is that, so the flu, colds, I mean, everything, we live in like a pool of germs. I mean, you're like, basically your immune system either protects you or doesn't.
Right.
And the whole trick is that if you are going to get something, have it affect you as little as possible. What you don't want to have happen is losing your taste and, your brain goes sideways. I mean, worse, where it extends. These people that say I had long COVID and, for months, it's affecting me. So what you want to hear is that in the progress of a disease, it's losing force, right? Because if you hear, you're having horrible results, like with Delta was like that in a lot of ways.
Yeah, Delta was vicious. And they're still struggling with Delta. A lot of patients with Delta in hospitals right now.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's powerful.
So, what was I going to say to you? Doggone it. So the pandemic, it looks kind of good. I'm going to watch that movie.
Yeah, it's worth watching. It's quite fascinating the way he's painting it. When he's showing you the movements, you can see the logic, and yeah, it's well worth watching.
So here's another question. Will Stacey Abrams, does she look good for governor in 2022?
Someone asked me that already in my channel, and I haven't done it yet. So I will do that.
I feel very strongly she's going to win. I think eventually, this is my own, from the time I first started reading on her, she may be president 10, 15 years down the road.
Well, I actually have her, I don't have her time, but I have her day. I'm just popping it up here.
What sign is she?
Okay, so she's a Sagittarius, and yeah, good odds, very good odds. Why? Because she's a Sagittarius with Neptune and Mercury. So in Sagittarius, there's 3 there. Mars in Aries, which is another fire sign. So what's happening here is Jupiter will enter Aries in the summer of next year, right? In May, right? Very favorable for her. She goes into that election really strong. Yes. So I agree with you. Really excellent chance. Really excellent chance. In fact, if I had to bet either way, I'd bet on her. Yeah. I mean, look, you know what? She almost won last time. The only reason she didn't win is that Kemp.
That guy was cheating.
Well, and Trump is insulting Kemp. Now, I mean, the amazing thing to me is how clueless the Republican Party is, that they align with a person who is actually losing them elections. Because this whole thing with the 22 election, there's a pattern developing where if you're not aligned with Trump, then he attacks you. So then there's a good odds that there will be Trumpian people running against Democrats, and they're more likely to lose because the Trumpian people are crazy. They're crazy people. They're people with insanity in their mind.
And Trump just did an interview where he told somebody when they were asking about Comey, he said, I had to get rid of him, otherwise I wouldn't be president still. He just admitted on an interview that he obstructed justice.
No,
what an idiot.
But the thing is, he knows that his people will follow him no matter what. So it's like a racial thing. He's our, white supremacist leader. The only thing missing is the hood, right? Really,
well, reality. Did you watch 60 Minutes last night?
I didn't, but I probably missed something good because that program.
Reality Winner was on there, and she couldn't talk much because she's still under probation. Basically, what she found beyond a reasonable doubt in the U.S. government is that Russia was interfering with our election for Trump.
Oh, well, of course.
Remember, President Jimmy Carter said, mark my words. I bet you Jimmy Carter was still getting intel because post presidents can. He said there will be a day that they find out beyond a reasonable doubt that Trump was in cahoots with Russia, which Mueller was already trying to tell us. Mm-hmm. And they will strip him of any kind of presidency. He's a done deal.
Is that how you see it? Because I've heard you say that you feel.
I said this years ago, and I didn't really know much about politics, but I said, mark my words, I felt like he was being stripped of anything he had because they're going to prove that he illegally won. Hillary Clinton won in 2016. So what she did is she had the proof and nobody's doing anything. The government, don't talk about it.
Right.
So what she did is she sent it to a newspaper. She's not like a spy going for another country. Right. She was trying to let the American people know. By doing that, and these people printing it, the people who are involved with the people that are involved with the voting, some big organization in the United States that handles all the voting, they didn't even know that Russia had compromised them. So they went in and changed everything. So that's why the 2018, where the Dems won hands down, even though Trump went city to city, that we had the safest election ever in 2018.
Right, in 2020 too. 2020 as well. Yeah, but this is the thing. See, okay, so what you're saying, here's the thing. It fits really well with Trump's chart is getting worse. He's got some serious problems.
We live for your readings,
I mean, I'm not joking around. Because I've seen this guy, I've watched him really carefully for about 5 years. I know what happens when they circulate in certain places. It's not going to a good place. And one of the things about Trump is he's like a magician at doing the wrong thing. He keeps telling you he's a winner. He's a dumb loser. He'll always choose. Like, remember when he brings in Barr and under Jupiter, right? Jupiter's like, great. So then he thinks, Mueller isn't going to get me, right? He brings in Barr. Barr's Mueller's not going to get me. Right away, he's phoning Ukraine. That's not a good move with all the people listening. So he complicates his life, then there's impeachment. And instead of talking about the economy, they're talking about him. He just constantly, does things to harm himself. Plus, there's the fact that there's strong karma there from the past, as you put it, right? Things that are on the record. I mean, anybody with a brain would be asking themselves, why is he always so interested in blocking everything? Because he wants to hide it. He doesn't want you.
Because he wants to hide.
Right. He wants to hide. Of course. Why wouldn't you? If someone wants to ask me about my papers, I'll say, here, take a look. I don't know. What are you going to find? What are you going to find?
Listen, actually, the last question I'm going to ask you, because I know you got to go and I do too. But it's wonderful talking to you. Thank you.
I know we always have a lot of fun.
We always have a good time. And then you know what? We just fill it up. So anyway, I wanted to ask you, I don't know when last time you've looked, what about, somebody asked on here, will Hillary Clinton be Attorney General in New York? I do not personally, I do not see her taking any kind of job like that.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I find that I don't get any kind of intuitive psychic sense about it. And the logic of it seems Why
Well, I
would you?
also feel she's exhausted. She doesn't feel like running anymore.
Yeah, I mean, why would you want to do Hillary? Hillary's trajectory was she was either going to be president or she was going to stop doing that because
Yeah,
everything for a person like that will feel too small. And
yeah,
I don't see, I don't think Hillary, why would you do that? That's crazy. That political work is a little bit like being a wrestler. It's
right.
crazy.
But have you looked at her chart recently?
I haven't, but let me put it this way. I know where her planets are. She's a Scorpio, so she is actually in a, you would call this a more difficult period that she's in, but I haven't heard anything. Have you? There's no,
No,
right? There's
I know her husband. I know Bill Clinton is sick. I know Bill
well,
Clinton's
okay,
health
right.
is very compromised, so she's probably really worried about that.
Well, and okay, and Bill Clinton is in the late degrees of Leo, right? He's a Leo, and that area gets heavy pressure next year. So the way when you're looking at a chart, it's like you look at the context of the situation. If a person is telling you, "Hey, I just got there's a disease and I'm working on it," that's not good with a planet like Saturn coming in, hitting on that. So 22 becomes a pretty tricky year. So you almost have to say, you got to get to the spring of 23. And maybe he doesn't, right? It's possible. Yeah, it's possible.
I
It's
didn't have a
possible.
good feeling about him. I'm not making no predictions. But I feel
Yeah,
worse about Trump. I think Trump's got some bad stuff coming up.
but Trump's is like it's like a siege of planets. You know, it's kind of like almost like a tag team thing where if I don't get you this way, I get you the other way. They're all kind
Right.
of lining up. Yeah.
I
So
always tell everybody, you remember what Andre said? Something comes out of something, and then all of a sudden, all that good luck and getting away with it is right out the door.
yeah, and I mean with Trump, by the way, I mean people, you know, there's that urge for revenge because he's tortured us. But you know, if you just basically ruin the guy and he's on his way to that,
He's
there's
on
a
his
real
way.
risk of losing all his
And we
money.
don't really have to do much more.
Yeah, and no, and people sometimes say they'll say things like, I've seen this on my channel. Oh, you know, he's all powerful, he's doing great. No, he's not. He's out of the presidency. He likes to be in charge. He's not in charge anymore. You know, he's lost his mojo. It's not, you know, I was watching this thing to where all his golf courses, his name, everything is really declined, you know, in his life. He's having
know.
to sell things in order to stay afloat. He's got legal problems. You wouldn't want that. And plus the
No.
fact that you're no longer the man saying, you know, you should all drink bleach to.
Yeah. And you know, they just posted on Twitter his Christmas card with him wearing a tux, and he's saying he's Merry Christmas and that he's at the winter White House, which he calls Mar-a-Lago, the winter White House.
It's unbelievable.
President, not former president, president.
Unbelievable.
And then the Christmas balls up on the corner of this little postcard. He's got his family faces in the balls. But guess who the first one is? Ivanka. And the second one is Melania. Then everybody else.
That's amazing. And by the way, in case anyone is confused, I mean, you got to give the guy credit. He knows that by playing this game, people keep sending him money. And
Oh,
you know,
that's
I got to, you know, I mean, if you knew that by saying something, people would send you millions of dollars, who wouldn't be tempted, right?
Yeah.
Not a good idea.
But that's going to catch up with him. Cheney
Yeah.
even said, keep
Yeah.
talking, Mr. President. Everything you say will be used against you.
Yeah. By the way, we could end on that too. She's got a good 22. My feeling about, are you talking about Liz Cheney?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I didn't see her losing. And, you know, she talks about all these Republicans coming up to her saying, you go, girl, but we can't say anything because we'll lose our ass.
Right. Well, I covered her in my thing yesterday in my class where I said that she took a gamble on a tough period where Saturn really opposing her in 2021, but 2022, it leaves those degrees and then Jupiter comes in and trines 22 and ahead of the election too. See, that's sort of the reverse of the Supreme Court doing their thing and messing it up for Republicans. For her, things improve substantially. But
That's
that
right.
also tells me that there are probably good odds that that committee is going to come up with good stuff, right? You always got
Good
to read it
stuff.
that
Where
way.
people aren't mad at them. Yeah.
Exactly. So she's in good shape.
It's just that the people, the Trumpsters are going to say it's fake news.
Yeah, well, they can say whatever they like. I mean, in the
Yeah.
end, you got to count the votes. And
But there's more rational, good people in the United States.
Yeah,
you
I
know,
mean,
so.
the one thing for everyone to remember, please, just vote. Don't worry about that. You know, people always say, "Oh, if I vote, they'll be cheating." Just vote. See what happens. Vote.
Vote.
Get it on paper.
And thank you,
know.
reality winner, because she saved the day.
Yeah,
She really did.
Right. Yeah.
So, all right, my friend, it was wonderful talking to
Right.
you.
Likewise. All right. Have a good week, and everyone have a good week.